If you know.
Okay, it is 5 o'clock. Thank you. Call the meeting, the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting to order. And that is number 1 on the agenda. Number 2, the city's drainage plan, Washington Middle School. So I'm going to turn this over to our Director, Buildings and Grounds, Michael.
Have you seen anything like this? Have I shown this to you yet? City of Manitowoc gave this to us. They have a plan over at Washington Middle School area. That 23rd and 24th Street have been flooding a lot in that area, so they're trying to come up with a plan to get rid of all of that excess rainwater when it rains several inches. So they have a grant. They received a grant to do a study on this. And bottom line is they would like to use part of our property at the Washington Middle School area there. And that football field just to the south of the building, what they would like to do is lower that area so it would look very similar to the Woodrow Wilson area. And that would be a spillway for them to take the excess stormwater. So they're doing a study on that now, including our property on that. Greg Minical from the city asked me twice now, I've met him over there, and I just said, as far as I'm concerned, I would hold off. I have to bring it to the board and talk about that. But if we would give up that property, we would not be able to build on it or anything like that. It would be part of the drainage plan, so we'd be giving up that property to them for any future planning. So,
And this is preliminary by the city? This plan has already been drawn up prior to us being contacted about this property?
correct.
How far has the city explored other options?
I don't know that. They're just, the architectural firm that they contracted with is just starting to do the drawings now. I think they just gave this rendering to start the idea.
Do we know, first of all, if this system that they're looking at doing, because as I recall, it's all subterranean, at least what they're looking at putting in. Does that mean that area would still be, for example, like Wilson's Bowl, that area would still be usable in some of the ways that we use it now?
Yes.
Or would it actually flood?
Only during that heavy rain period, and I think it's that once every 100-year rain, that's when it would flood.
So
It would take
twice a
some
year?
time. Some years, yes.
Yeah, so once every 100 years could be twice a year, could be not for, a decade and a half.
Otherwise, we'd be able to use it all the time for football. If there's recesses going on over there at the middle
Oh,
school.
it's used for probably
Yes.
every day that's nice for the Wilson or Washington.
Correct.
Do you have your hand up or you? No. What do they want us to do? I'm not in favor of, if they need a motion that we're not selling the property or.
They have not asked anything of us other than they gave me this plan and this is what we'd like to do. And I said twice, I wouldn't be going in that direction. I said I would bring it to you and let you know that this is what they're looking at doing.
Say you fulfilled your job then.
Okay. I will talk to Greg Minical. Go ahead.
My concern would be if they did this, what the risk of that area, because basically what they're doing is they're taking all the flooding and they're storing all of it under that whole area primarily. My concern would be we'd want to know what risk that puts the Wilson Foundation at, because, the Washington, thank you, sir, because it's directly north of it, and what risk it proposes to the Rubik Field, because that's directly south of it.
Correct.
If we know they can do that and can't harm our other properties, and the worst that's gonna happen is if we have a once every 100 years, in other words, every spring flood, we can't use it for 8 days. to me, that's not a big emergency, but I want to know that we're not gonna mess up everything else, and that it's not always going to be filling up with water so that we're just creating a skating pond.
Oh, yeah. Good point. And we've had problems with that gymnasium over there.
We
also, moving around, and we don't know why that is either, so.
But they wanna kick in.
If you have a comment?
I was just gonna ask if that would mitigate the problem with the gym, that it's sinking, or
May exacerbate the problem.
exactly, I mean, does Greg and the city know about that issue with the gym? I mean, there must be something under there, springs or something, or,
I don't recall in my conversation. I think I mentioned it to him, but I don't recall.
Any other discussion on this? I think that you did your due diligence, you brought it forth. The city has no concrete plans, no specific offer. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, but right now I would say that we're not interested in selling that property.
Rent on that acre.
There you go. Item number 3, capital improvement plans, critical needs. This also would be you, Michael?
Right now, I'm working on a plan or an idea to get the costs, what we could do for eliminating some of the very critical needs. And looking at $24 million that I would be able to spend, what can I do for $24 million? And that's what I'm going through school right now and trying to come up with a decent plan for everyone. So I'm about halfway through.
Where did that number come from?
Chris asked me to
Okay.
come up with it.
Yeah, if you don't mind, we
No.
were just talking one day and Mike said, I said, well, we have 47 million of urgent need. And he said, I believe I can get a lot more than half of that stuff done. And more economically than what's being put there. And I said, well, what would help you? How about half of that? So we talked about 24, and he started working now on a prioritized list of what would be first and what would be last on that list to do.
Correct.
Because then we have something, we have something tangible, something factual to present to people to say,
right,
with 24 million,
exactly.
here's all the stuff that we're going to attack, starting here, working down.
Okay. Mr. Tennis, you had something, you have a game plan or something you wanted to share with going on to with staffing and what's gonna?
I'll share this with the board. Prior to Jim's resignation, we had scheduled staff
We meeting,
What's that?
we meaning you said we.
The director team
Okay,
and
thank
Jim had scheduled staff meetings with each building to discuss. So one of the things I don't think we did last round of conversation was go to the buildings, because when you think about our employee groups in the district, we have 650 people that are working in our schools every day that not only know our buildings very well, but they also know our community very well, and they're respected people in our community. And the best way to get information out to people that's accurate and information that they need is to have people talking at barbecues and birthday parties and such. And so our goal is to go to each of those meetings, and we have all of those scheduled. I'll provide the board with a list of all of those meetings, times, and locations. Anyone's welcome to come. But the real plan is we're just going to share our brutal facts as they relate to our facilities. And we're going to do so in about a 45-minute presentation with some dialogue, with answering questions that they may have about what some of these priorities may be or thoughts that they have on those. But those are scheduled, and we'll, and really that's the first step. In addition to the prioritized list that Mike's working on, simultaneously, we're also just kind of thinking about what options we would have to fund that. And so our goal would be to have some of that brought forward to all of you, within the coming weeks as something to consider. you know, in listening to conversations the board had, leading up to sort of, you know, kind of moving away from taking action on things, I think our team heard that there's an appetite to get some of those important pending things that need to be done in our district done. And so we want to start taking steps forward to getting onto some of those.
So this is more informational rather than
Information.
solutions.
Correct.
Okay.
And we also know that in the meantime, and I think in conversation that I had with Chris, he uses the word triage, and I think like these are like the ER room visits. These are like we gotta tackle some of these for safety purposes and making sure that our schools are conducive to learning. And if what I do know is that there were plenty of things to choose from. Having Mike and his team going through and prioritizing, I think will help the board. Also, in terms of maybe we're not comfortable with 24, but maybe we're comfortable with whatever number, but whatever we are comfortable with, we have the prioritized list to start with. And that would help us plan in a very intentional way moving forward.
Any questions?
Have we figured out where the money's coming from? Let's just say we come up with a list for 24 million and we all like it.
Not that I know of.
So when do we start talking about that?
Go ahead.
I will talk about it anytime. I believe the best way to do that is to go to referendum and ask the public to okay the borrowing of that money for those things.
Specifics.
You know, I mean, the other choice is the only other choice is to borrow without going to the public, and I believe going to the public per referendum is the best way to handle it. Because we're not gonna have 24 million.
So
Yeah.
can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
On why would,
Well, I guess as opposed to borrowing, like why?
well, if we go to the public, we would be going to the public on referendum to borrow the 24 million. And by doing that, we are then, the public is then, if they support that, they also support the addition to the taxes to pay off that 24 million automatically, separate from our operational money. So we don't have to take operational money to pay off the 24. And obviously, first you get the list, then you look at what part are you gonna borrow? Maybe some of it's gonna come from fund balance. I don't wanna
No.
put our business manager into shock, but she knows I'm more casual about fund balance than she is. So you finally decide, you know, what's gonna be the amount that you're gonna do with what you can anticipate having, and what's gonna be the amount that you're gonna wanna borrow for that you can't anticipate. And frankly, with the rates coming down, it's a good time to look at doing that, I think.
I'm just worried that, you know, there's an element of referendum fatigue and, you know, I personally like the debt option better, seeing as we had, from the way I understood it, there was room within the budget to do that if we structured it the right way. And personally, that's what
You
I'm,
mean just borrow the money?
right, yeah.
Yeah, and within the budget, there isn't, you put your other programming at risk where if you go out to referendum and do it through Fund 39, you don't. So that's where the main difference is between the Fund 38 borrowing, which we were talking a little bit more about in the summer, versus the 39 where you go out to the voters.
If it's gonna go through a referendum, though, I think the secure way is the education in a sort of plan as to what is gonna happen in our district. As you've indicated, get the staff and the community, if it's gonna go to a referendum for that education needs to be widely accepted and understood versus just borrowing, which I think we got ourselves into trouble the last time. As I've told anybody who wants to listen, when Mr. Kruba entered in back in the early 90s, late 80s, when he went for $65 million way back there, the strategic plan to remodel all the buildings and the auditorium in 2001 and all of these things that happened in the late 90s, when you got a $65 million referendum passed strategically, a year and a half of education, that thing passed 60-40, 70-30. It was without question, because the entire community jumped on the bandwagon. I think we need something similar to that, to this approach. Because we're asking for big money, and we're already in a referendum. We're already off of 3 or 5 year referendum.
And that's just for operational, so this would be different where it'd be capital. So the last one, that the district ran, we haven't asked for capital referendums since 2004, I believe
Four,
it is.
yes,
Yep, and then the 97 was the one before that,
correct.
correct, so that's the one.
Okay, thank you.
So we do a capital referendum to address half of our critical issues. And then at what point do we talk about all the other issues that were following that?
That would allow us time to start looking at, give us more time to do an in-depth, long-range plan. This would take care of the triage pieces right now. And then that would be in 25, 27 would be operational, and then from there, it'd be time.
So basically be pushing back what we talked about a couple months ago.
Reframing it, I would say,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
If I just add to the conversation, this past week, there's a fellow named Jim Munzenmeyer, who used to live in Manitowoc here, he's a graduate of here. He was a building inspector for the city for many years, worked with him when I was on the city council. He's currently the buildings and grounds director of a very large school district in southwest Minneapolis. And he's in year 6 of a 10-year, $150 million renovating project essentially for the entire district. In his district, they have 7 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and I believe 2 or 3 high schools. And he just reached out to say, listen, I know you guys are having these conversations. Through my experiences here in Minnesota, I think there's some things that are very, very relevant and real that you're gonna deal with, that I may be able to help give you a heads up on, or, hiccups along the way and some advice to. And so Mike and I are in the process of scheduling a meeting with him to have some of those conversations to help us really do some homework up front as to how we might set up a process to get to exactly where Tony's talking about, that long range vision and plan. Because when they did theirs, they took and they created an entire 10-year plan on the process that they used. So I'm very keen on what that looked like and how it worked, what were some hiccups, what were some things to try to avoid. Because in addition to the education about our initial needs, we're also going to have to do some conversations around what is it the community does want in the school district for the next 50 to 75 years. Because we can't forget that, like all of us, there's life expectancy to us, there's life expectancy to our buildings, and we have the oldest high school in the state that is now over 100, and a couple of middle schools that are in their 80s. And as Angela pointed out, and I'm pretty sure the referendum in the early 2000s was to deal with the food service program. Am I accurate on that?
Yes,
The capital one was in that late 90s, and that was the work that was laid out by what you were talking about. So I just think we have to collaborate with people who've been through it and kind of know. And so Tony, I guess to answer your question, the goal would be, we're gonna talk to some folks, gather as much information we can to put forward a process where we get to exactly what you're talking about, which is beyond the emergency room and triaging that we need to do. What's our long-term plan here and how are we gonna get there?
So I guess as a follow-up to that, I believe we said we trim that list of critical from 47 or 48 to 24. How confident are we that if we trim it to 24, that we'll be okay until that next event?
Not 100% confident, because we're gonna have some other things popping up along the way. But this buys us a little bit of time to do some of this long-range planning.
Would there be any major, when I hear critical, I guess that's just a little bit vague, would there be any like major safety concerns that wouldn't be resolved with that 24 million?
I can't answer that for you right now. I'm paying
Yeah.
attention to that as I'm going through this.
I think as part of this, guys, we have to make sure that we're super diligent on that and not risk any injury due to a neglect or lack of a maintenance plan. And going forward, we need to develop and include a realistic number in our budget for ongoing maintenance. If we don't have it, instead of just, being reactive on this after the fact and wondering, how do we get all these costs we can't deal with? We need to start planning better and then having that conversation if we're not there right now.
Agreed.
Any other comments, questions? Angela, no, I guess central office relocation update. You all have the memo submitted to you by the Director of State and Federal Programs, Mr. Tennis, and also a collaborative statement by the directors. There is a recommendation. The administration is requesting that the Board of Education either delay or rescind the vote to relocate central office with the underlying rationale. Any questions or any discussions about that?
I might be okay with this if we were able to accelerate the other part of this, which was kind of what we tabled the last time when we voted for this, which was figuring out the schools. And I don't know where we're at on that, but
I don't either, and I think that's a nice compromise. I would go along with that, because I do think that as Mr. Tennis brought out, if this Munzenmeyer gentleman or anybody else can give us some options where we can close schools and track schools and get this process moving in the future and get the public on our side and educated. I agree. I think that delay or rescind the vote based on other supportive evidence is what we need to do. I think one of the most important things is it costs over $100,000 to move, and I'm not sure we paid $100,000 for this building when it was relocated from McKinley. But yes.
If I may just add, gentlemen, in all seriousness, with the current structure that we're already going to, we're thinned out a little bit too. And we have people, money, and time. And I also heard from this board pretty loud and clear that student achievement is a focus of ours. And for us to take our eyes off the prize on that, to move around furniture and people into spaces that make it less collaborative, less like a team, and more inefficient. And quite frankly, this is the only building in our district where we can offer professional development with the large groups of people that we have. And many times warm summer months, this is air conditioning. We don't have those type of spaces available. Not that I say we have to have air conditioning, but boy, it sure makes it a lot more conducive to learning when you're in this environment versus ask any teacher who teaches on the third floor of Lincoln this week. I used to be one of them, and I'd bring shirts to change into on days like today. So, more than anything, we can respect any decision you make, but knowing that we only have so much time and energy on things, I would prefer that we spend them on the more important things right now than figuring out what to do with offices and buildings and converting classrooms, and that's even omitted in there. What about the cost to convert classrooms into office spaces with data drops and all of the things? I just really feel strongly that.
We don't know where they would be,
Correct.
where they'd be located.
Do I think that there's an opportunity to relocate and do something different with central office in a bigger vision plan of what we want to get to? I absolutely do. Personally, my personal opinion is I've always felt like central offices should be attached to a school building in your district because it's with the kids and that's what we're about. So that's my personal take on it. But just right now, I just think it's, we feel very strongly that we'd like this either brakes pumped until we can figure it out or have the people and the time and the energy to do it. Or just to say, hey, let's rescind completely, and when we do get a vision, we'll vision in central offices into a space that's most conducive to our district and our service to our community.
Any other questions?
It's just antithetical to to the repair responsibilities we have. I mean, we've been spending a ton of money to like, you know, and I think you're right. I don't think we'd get, you know, a big payoff by selling this either. So I think we need to proceed with what Mike is up to, and wow, you know, hope we get a referendum and et cetera. Because I mean, I look at the budget, and it's like we're kind of like we're not even now. And you know, even though you shifted 250 million, 2.5 million over to fixing up stuff, man, that's just not going to go far, is it? And I don't know where else we get it.
I got an idea. We could right-size our school district and
We could what?
we could right-size our facilities to our population.
Well, yeah,
And
we
save
get
$1
a
million
million
a year.
each.
We can revisit that.
I think we need to get that out. So it's not Santa Claus Sunday. We shut down, you know, Jackson School.
Well,
Okay,
some
let's,
school's gonna have to shut
that's,
down. I mean,
that discussion's already, we've already had that discussion. Let's go back to this memo and the motion, or the suggestion. Is there a motion to rescind, or there's a motion to delay the relocation of central office?
I think I'm in favor of this. What I would like to see as part of this is some sort of clear timeline on a decision being made for the long-term structure of our school. Because it's gonna be very difficult to accomplish what we want long-term if it's just like, hey, we're gonna do another referendum, hey, we're gonna do this. Oh, hey, by the way, we're gonna keep more space than we need at an extra cost of $1 million more a year. So I think we need to show the public we're gonna be good stewards with resources. And I think that it would be responsible if we were to accept this proposal, that as part of it, we make it contingent to having some decision on the buildings, because that's $1 million a year in OpEx that we can get back. That's huge.
So your motion is to rescind this and then put it forth on a timeline? State your motion again.
Well, I guess my motion would be to accept this proposal contingent on having a decision of the long-term facilities footprint of the district, like the buildings.
On a timeline, on a sequential order, based on?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know what's a reasonable time frame for that, but, you know, every year that we don't do this, it's costing us $1 million that we're missing out on. So I would like it sooner than later. And, you know, I don't know if we can do that in the next month or two, but I know we had some discussion a few months back. And I don't know what work, if any, has been done towards public outreach, but.
Well, I think if we're gonna follow the suggestion of the directors and Mr. Tennis and start going to the public, and then after that, going to the public with education, getting some other opinions on what we need to do and how this may be handled, get Mike's opinion. This is all gonna take time to pull all this together. I'm not sure it can be done in the next month and a half or two. I think it's gonna take some time to get that together. Plus, the education to the public is gonna take some time as well. It isn't going to be a referendum in April, because I don't think we would be ready to even begin that conversation. But I do think, and I do like your idea that discussions like this has to be tied to a full-blown outlay of time, sequence, and collaboration.
And I was just gonna say, I agree with right sizing, and there's a number of ways to think about right sizing. And we can work on a timeline of how to bring a process to have a conversation about that, both to our public and to all of you. But again, I think, I sort of look at these two issues as related, but maybe not married. In other words, we have our facilities issues here. We obviously have expressed that there are some triage things that we need to do and probably take action on sooner than later. While those are being done, figuring out that long-range facilities piece, my idea would also be simultaneously, we need to have conversations about our enrollment, where those are, where our capacity is on our schools, and begin to have conversations about how to right size that too. that absolutely needs to happen, and we can begin to put a timeline and a process together for this committee's review. I can't tell you today how many days that would take us. I am gonna just guesstimate that that is probably a 60-day thing to have a very solid plan in place, or at least a proposal of a process and a timeline that we could consider for doing that very thing.
Yeah, I just think it would be a prudent way to approach it.
I agree. I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
Would it be wise, since the rollout of the last plan did not go very well, to contact the city 30 miles south of here and went through this whole process? The board started a plan and then they had to change it because the public rejected it. Green Bay went through the same thing. They were gonna close 2 high schools, didn't close them, closed more grade schools than they closed because the public came back and said, that doesn't work for us. So it would, in my head, I'm thinking, rather than make the same mistakes that those 2 districts did, and I believe there's another one that they were talking about at the CISA 7 meeting I was at, smaller district, that went through the same process. The board, the administration decided what to do, the community said no. So there has to be a time when we bring them in before that proposal is done, so it's not.
And that could be part of the
Roll
time.
out. It's gotta be.
And again, this is fact finding, right? Angela shared today, an idea around surveying, and, we use school perceptions for surveying our staff. They are also, quite touted for their ability to gauge community pulse on things like this. My thing is, if you're doing a survey, you could do a survey really well and not only get thoughts and ideas and opinions about buildings and developing that vision, but also the right sizing part of it. Because you're right, I think we would want the data in front of us to show where our community was in terms of their thoughts and opinions on all the things related to that.
Once our community becomes aware of what the needs are in each one of our buildings and the understanding of the dollar amount to fix each one, their whole perception could possibly change and jump on the bandwagon of saying, in this timeline, you're right, this building has got to go, da, 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 da. But they need that education as well as anybody does, as well as the board does.
There's a, Green Bay used a company that let them know which schools actually were the ones that they could close to and affect the fewest number of kids. And it came down to bus routes and
There's a lot of companies that do that.
right, and those are things that I think we need to look at and say, you're closing these 2 schools, but does that make sense? Are we moving more kids than we have to? Are there other schools that could be closed? So those are all things that, unless it was done somewhere that we don't know about, I don't think we went through. And don't make the same mistakes Sheboygan and Green Bay. And
So Tony, what is your, I agree. What is your motion gonna be then?
Well, I suggest, we table this until we get that plan together. Or tie it to that plan.
So you're good with delaying motion?
I am, but I would like to see a contingent on having
Sure.
a
Okay.
plan that.
So that's your motion, is to delay action on the board central office relocation, contingent on a timeline developed to be presented to the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah, I think that's.
Okay? Any second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
I would just say or add to that, I think we have a real opportunity here, if we message this the right way, that this could help achieve the objectives of the district, because it'll show taxpayers that we're being responsible, and we're not, just, foolishly maintaining more than we need. And I think when we do message it to the public, I understand there's gonna be people that are gonna be very, not everyone's gonna be happy with whatever we end up doing. But I think that however we message it, we have to make sure they know that, the alternative is just that you pay more through the nose in taxes, and I don't think anyone wants that, so.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, next. Angela, I believe you're up.
Yep, medical and dental insurance rate. So just wanted to share this with the committee. There was an attachment in board book. And our plan is performing quite well overall. Proposing a trend increase for this year. That's what a 6% is. So that's what the proposal is, just to fund our medical insurance plan. Dental plan is performing well and would not require an increase at this time.
So you need board action to approve this medical and dental renewal?
Yes.
Any discussion? I need a motion to approve the medical and dental renewal plan?
And that's a 6% overall.
Yes, 6% for the medical plan and then
Zero
for the dental, yes. Wait, who had said first?
I'm moving to approve the 6% medical, global, and zero dental.
Matt was second. Any other discussion?
I mean, I think this is pretty consistent with what we're seeing across the board with health insurance. This is us self-funding it, right?
Correct, yes.
Which is actually less of an increase than most have seen, so.
Which is truly one of the benefits of being self-funded is you have the opportunities to, on high years, bring them down a little bit to make things less onerous for everybody. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the motion of 6% on the medical and dental signify by saying aye.
6% on the medical, zero on the
Opposed?
dental.
Thank you. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
But we've got to give them as much good.
Yes, we
as
certainly
got
do.
on
Yes, we
insurance
certainly do.
rates.
Depositories, Angela.
Okay, so annually we just bring depository, a listing of depositories to the board. This just shows where we invest our money. Our main accounts are at Bank First. We receive excellent service and support from them. So just looking for motion to.
Mr. Abel?
One quick question. It doesn't look like any of these have changed.
No.
No.
Okay, move to approve.
Okay. Second? Thank you, Matt. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the depository request by the business
Yeah.
office. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Angela, I believe you are on the agenda again.
Hey, budget amendments for audit purposes. We run a final round of these for the prior years. So the main change in here is just large areas where there was a variance in spending, and then that 2.5 million shift over to Fund 46. So the attachment, the second page is what would be published in the paper. So we would bring it to October 8th meeting, and then I'd send it out for publication.
This is to move that over to Fund 46?
Correct, to acknowledge it as a part of the official budget.
Need a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. I need a second. Thank you, Matt. Motion to approve and seconded to move these reallocations. Signify by saying aye.
Can we have discussion on this?
Pardon me?
Can we talk about this?
Oh, sure.
So we're still in the red, right? On this?
At this point, we're finalizing some details for audit, but we are at a surplus currently of about $480,000, so.
Oh, okay.
So that's where that lands. The really tricky part when we get to the end of July is we're working as quick as an office as we can to wrap up final transactions, and then we have to look at the plan performance for the self-funded health and dental insurance, and we have to make our best estimate at the time, so leave a little cushion so that we're okay. I mean, it's and go with that at the time, so.
I'm sorry,
Or you're looking at the preliminary budget right there.
yeah, I'm looking at
Okay,
this coming year, right? This is what we're gonna be voting on in October.
correct,
And so we're still in the red there, so I'm.
correct, yeah, and we're on the previous agenda item with the budget amendments, though. This is closing out the next year.
Yeah.
Or the previous year, excuse me, 23-24.
Hopefully, we won't be talking about 23,
Sorry,
24.
I was
much.
looking
No,
at the wrong
right.
attachment.
Yeah, we shouldn't be.
Okay.
I mean, we're gonna have an audit report in January, and we have to do that. I mean,
Okay.
last year, if you'd remember from the audit presentation from Randy from Hawkins Ash. He said, you know, one of the findings we had is that our budget doesn't match what is adopted by the board. So we made a $1.4 million transfer the other year. So it's kind of like, you just need to do a transfer or another budget amendment to kind of reflect where you landed. And talked to Ken in the past, he'd say, yeah, you do September, October, you know, that was typically what he did too. So this is actually kind of on the template that we follow annually to do final budget amendments.
So is this saying that we came in under budget by almost $500,000 last year?
Correct, yes.
Wow, how about that?
It's possible.
It's unaudited, right?
And the really tricky thing about all of this is when you do that, when you settle out that self-funded insurance, you don't know until that time where you land. So it's not like we were just not spending money through the year. That's important to know. It, you know, like we were just not working to spend down our budget, because that's always your goal, so. Just a nuance of that.
A lot of that you think is related to the health insurance costs?
Yes.
And that's just kind of, some years are worse than others type thing?
Yeah, we've had good years. We've been very, moving to offering a high deductible health plan and a PPO. People like to have the option.
Yeah.
That's really been a
But let's
benefit.
not brag about how good it's been. That's bad karma.
I know, I shouldn't do that. I'll hold it. Sorry, not big.
Yeah, that's bad.
Be grateful for
We
our
would just be
employees and
very, very nice.
Very
Oh,
Yeah. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now the biggie. Angela?
Okay, so, our budget, the latest updates wrapped up last week, and we are still at a deficit right now, and we are working internally to bring this down. You know, as with all things with the budgets, you know, so we have a meeting on Monday, we're working as a team, and our goal is to bring down like the amount that we had in this memo down to zero. And we have plenty of ideas. The other sort of moving target at this point from preliminary numbers is our open enrollment. That is concerning, so, third Friday count is tomorrow, and that's the big event. And,
You said it was going up.
huh?
You said it was going up.
Our open enrollment is going up, more than we'd like it to be. And so, you know, we've worked to diligently solve the deficit we're aware of. We may have more that we have to work through, or, you know, we just have to work through it as best we can, or we may have a little bit of a deficit budget related
The
to
open
that.
enrollment's going up, meaning more kids are leaving.
Correct, correct.
Open enrollment's going up because they're coming. The exit.
Yes. Really, we found that the largest amount has gone out since July. And so that's where we're very concerned about the number that's gone out since that time. And,
Any reason what why it's happening this year?
we don't know specifically, we don't know if some of the, if community concern, anything like, we don't
There's
know.
no exit when a person open enrolls out. We don't ask for what the reason.
We do survey about once a year, and it really doesn't, there's so many varying reasons. Work, sometimes they'll share, but the last survey we had, some people would have concerns about things going on in the district at times. It really varied, so, but we do annually run that survey.
What do those numbers look like? Do we have that data?
Well, they look about 100 students more than we had anticipated, so that's, and with the weighting of that, that's where we have to find out where that's gonna land, but it's, as I mentioned, it's like, maybe I jinxed myself, you know, I feel I budget conservatively on the high end compared to what we've been having in the prior years, and it's coming out a little higher than that, so. I'll keep the board updated on that, so once we get Friday count finalized, and we'll know more.
Yeah.
So,
Do you know if the voucher program is going up at all in the county as well?
that I won't know till October 15th, so that's the other, like, yeah.
Okay, two things I'd like to say is, even if the voucher program does go up, we get state reimbursement on that, so it has less of an effect than open enrollment out of the district versus in. And I want to say that I have personally seen at schools and here at central office, the efforts that are extended to people who are considering open enrolling out of the district to encourage them to stay in the district. So we are not passive on these things. We are very active on trying to keep people here, and even after some people choose to open and roll out, inviting them to please consider us for the following year to come back, so that we're not just, well, okay, shruggy.
We lost that at-risk virtual school, is that correct? What am I,
So we have
what am I
about,
talking about?
yeah, we have about 18 students open and rolling out to virtual schools.
Right, but we had that, but we got rid of that, correct?
Correct, correct.
That's loss of kids?
Yes. That's definitely contributing, and then there's a lot of 4K that is, there was a rise in that number. So it's not like they're here, they're choosing to come before they even come in our doors. And sometimes 4K is an animal all of its own, that they come in kindergarten then, so sometimes that is a little more unique.
I think
Mr.
the
Sims?
biggest factor that I've seen over the years with 4K is we're offering half-day programming.
Right.
While other options in town offer full day.
Well,
It's
4K is
a lot of-
1.6 reimbursement, it's not a full
Correct.
1.0 FTE.
Which is why it's not cost prohibitive
Right.
or it's cost prohibitive
It is
for us to do a full day.
Correct.
However, there's all sorts of things to factor into, returns on investments, right? So I think we have to gauge, one of the things I wanna see is we gotta gauge how many of these are that to determine, is it worth looking at doing something differently so that we don't lose those families out of the gate.
So are we losing the 0.6 4K kid to a 1.0 4K?
Well, oftentimes that's what it is, because these parents work all day, they
Sure,
don't wanna
sure.
arrange for, childcare because that's expensive. And,
Sure.
so, yeah, that's an issue that we've heard about from the community.
Can we get that number? Of to how
Yeah,
many,
we can work that out.
Yeah,
can we get that
definitely.
number of the 0.6, the kids that left to 4K?
Mhm.
And went to
Yes.
1.0 4K?
Yeah, and then a lot of times that we can look at that.
But again, the reimbursements, as you mentioned, from the state for us, for the
0.6.
4K is.
Well, it used to be only 0.5%. It used to be, so it went up
It went slightly.
1%. It used to be only
But that's an issue that we have to also consider.
So I guess the board can anticipate then that within the next couple of meetings, that you'll be presenting with all the directors collaborative a process for.
Not only that, but I plan to put forward, let's call it a strategic plan to help reverse those numbers for the
Okay.
future. And that's within the first 2 months.
Okay.
Because it's important that we start reversing trend on that. And there are ideas out there.
Any other questions for Lee or Angela? Clear government, ClearGov.
Just a short reminder, we've been talking about this a very little bit, but instead of the old fashioned book that we'll have for the budget booklet, we'll be transforming that into a digital resource that'll also it will be printed off as well. So we've been working on this for a few months, the implementation process, and now it's just putting all the pieces together. So it'll be a nice resource, and I think as we work to communicate more with our community, we can use that tool.
Any questions for Angela regarding that? The last one is an option to go into closed session, but it is based on the sale of our property. And it has come to attention, and was talking to Angela and to talk to a couple of people, that Mr. Dupre, Lincoln at one time, and the board at one time, was looking to use that facility, part of Building for the Future and part for a tech ed. Is that correct?
Yeah, several years ago, our tech ed teachers at Lincoln had proposed building a facility on that property, essentially to operate a sawmill.
Correct.
They wanted to operate a sawmill so that, it would cut down on some costs of the materials they use within the class. We have the school forest and there's trees that need to be taken care of out there that there was a plan. That plan was shared with, at that time, our buildings and grounds director, Mr. Chris Dupre. And at that time, in our initial conversations, he seemed like pretty okay with the idea. There were further conversations then that occurred around, and this is where once it became off my plate of
Sure,
being a possibility, I sort of said, okay. But there were other conversations about how things were zoned there and some other questions that they had to involve the city with. And honestly, after that initial proposal that we had made to Mr. Dupre, I lost track of all the reasons why it didn't happen. There were several. But yes, at one time, there was interest from our staff to do something for tech ed on that site.
Okay.
Because we did own it, and at one time, there was apparently something there that we did do, but I don't remember the history at this point, but it was about 2 or 3 years ago.
I'm not in favor of just saying, okay, we're gonna sell that property. If the school, it is a school-based property, we do have an active or a somewhat active interest in using that land.
It was, I
Correct. And until we really get an investigation as to whether that land is proposed use for the school district or not, I'm not in favor of selling it, so. I don't know if we need to go into closed session for that at this point in time. Unless somebody objects that we should sell it. But I'd like to take a motion at this point to just take it off the table and see what's gonna happen with us in the district as far as use of that land.
So is this that property that,
On Green Street,
Across the street.
that little corner lot.
so do we have like an actual use for it? I mean, I guess what you just talked about, right?
That's what we wanted to do with it. But as I was having a conversation with Mike as well, you know, as we do cast forward this vision and if something, you know, let's say that we do decide to do some tech ed related investments, could that property be a place where we could have something that even maybe goes, and again, remember, this proposal that those teachers made was something they thought very doable based on something that we could do within our own school budget and grants that we receive. That was a project that we estimated to cost between, at the time, 35 and 40,000, which was something that we could handle. In further conversations here, as we don't know what this vision might be, and knowing we have facility issues and room issues with our tech ed program at Lincoln, perhaps there could be conversations about even doing something grander than a $40,000 garage with a sawmill, right? Is that space conducive to putting a facility that maybe could do or house more opportunities than that?
Actually expanding the.
Correct.
It sounds like Mr. Dupre just decided that it was gonna go for sale without coming to the board and even having a conversation to the board about the property. Yeah, because from understanding conversation that this was, no, you can't, we're not gonna use it, so we're gonna sell it.
Could I make a friendly amendment to say that you reject the offer to purchase? Because there's an offer to purchase on the table, and I understand you wanna negate that.
So what, you say that one more time?
Your
The sale.
motion would be to reject the offer
Make the
to
motion then.
purchase. Well, you already have one on the table,
Oh,
so I'm
okay.
saying make it an amendment.
I'll accept that,
So he's
that amendment then.
just,
Um,
he's rejecting the offer to purchase on the property.
And I guess if we do that, how soon would it take?
Okay, wait a minute, that's my motion, before we get into discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Go
And the
ahead.
reason why it's just, it's
Keep
closing out it's closing out the discussion, because there was an offer to purchase, and now we are rejecting the offer to purchase, so that it actually stops now. So if they would, we're supposed to reply within a couple days,
Mhm.
and we didn't, obviously, but now there'll at least be a motion that we're rejecting the offer to purchase, and if they would like to write a new one, obviously they could, but if that initial one will be over now.
Tony, you have now discussion?
I was just trying to understand the likelihood that we
Something-
could actually utilize that space. I mean, it sounds
And we
like.
can investigate that more. Because as I said to you, I know that there was a conversation after we had our initial proposal to Mr. Dupre with the city, and there was some question on zoning. So we can investigate what options we have based on the current zoning of that property as well. But I don't know it now. I didn't know really anything about this until this
Yeah.
morning when we were in the meeting, but you know, we can find that out of what options and maybe you already know, because we talked about this, because I asked you specifically, what about this and your thoughts? And he was saying, I don't, well, you can speak for yourself.
I just didn't want to give up the option of possible future expansion over there. If we own the property already, let's hold it for now until we get through this strategic plan.
Yeah, sure.
I guess, yeah, the only potential downside I was thinking of is, you know, let's just say that doesn't come to fruition, then we're sitting on land, and how easy would it be to sell that? You know, I'm guessing, I don't know, you know, that would be the only downside, but I could certainly see if there's a potential use for it, then we should probably explore that.
Chris?
Yeah, I would say, although I haven't gone and checked out what the exact lot lines are, I would say that property being in a primarily residential area, while it does have a very scenic view of a high school parking lot across the street, it also has quite a lovely view of the lake.
Yeah.
So as an empty lot, at least by city standards in assessment value, the fact that it not only is what's considered a lake lot, it is actually a lake view lot, puts the lot empty at a high value. So I think if we ultimately decide we don't want it, I think we could successfully sell it. I think there'd be a number of people interested.
Motion's been made and seconded. Thank you for the rewording of the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Any other discussion? Good of the meeting? See none, I accept the motion to adjourn. Second? Thank you. Motion's made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you.